Alright, so check this out. At best friend's funeral, me and two others saw her breathing deeply for 20 seconds. So, we were viewing her body at her wake. We were her three besties and the last ones in line. One of the girls was stroking her hair and saying how peaceful she looked. She looked like she was sleeping. And suddenly, we see her embalmed body that had been dead for a week start to take deep, slow, meditative breaths. We were in shock at first, staring at this glitch or phenomenon. After about 20 seconds, we all looked at each other with this look of, did we all just witness that? At that moment, the usher's presence broke the spell and she was inanimate again. We confirmed what had happened while outside smoking. We all saw her breathe in and out for about 10 or 20 seconds. We never spoke of it again for some odd reason, and this was 22 years ago, and I'm the only one that's still alive out of the three of us. I believe the deceased was showing us that death is absolutely not the end. Sarah, Roslyn, and Autumn will all be together sooner than later, I'm sure. Several years ago, my car changed colors. I just stumbled across this subreddit, so I thought I'd share one of the, quite frankly, many odd and unexplainable experiences that I've had over my lifetime. This would have happened in 2018. Honestly, isn't it odd that so many people have stories from this exact time frame? Perusing the sub, I noticed that year seems to be prominent. Anyway, I had this car, a blue 2001 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. It's the car that I learned how to drive on. It honestly didn't get much use by this time period and kinda just sat there, but I knew that car like the back of my hand. Even though I didn't drive it often anymore, my friends and I would often use it as a sort of hangout spot, as I lived in a small trailer at the time with my parents and two siblings. There wasn't much privacy in that place. And this wasn't like once or twice. We'd hang out in that car all the time, pretty much nightly, as I was always with friends getting up to some sort of trouble at this point in my life. We'd hung out in the car as recently as the night before. In fact, I remember this quite well. That's why it was bizarre the next morning when, upon glancing outside of the window of my then home, I noticed that the car wasn't blue, but green. I took the shortest, most innocuous glance at the thing and I had to do a double take. In that moment, I experienced the most surreal feeling. Something akin to deja vu, but with increased intensity, followed by this wave of fear, like adrenaline almost. Like I just witnessed something dire or terrifying. I can't really explain my reaction now, but my stomach just dropped for a moment. I called all of my friends over to look at the car, and they'd remarked how they could have sworn that it was blue as well. One of them, without even prompting me to do so. I hadn't yet told them what was wrong when I said we were going to check on my car. This is something that's bothered not just me, but everyone else that I used to hang out with in that car for a long time now. We even did some digging, and unfortunately, I found that in all the previous photos of the vehicle, it never appeared to be blue. It was always green. There is one discrepancy though, and that's the title. The title says that the car is blue. This entire experience was disturbing in a very odd way. From the emotions that it invoked to, well, the questions that I still have now, years later, about how something like this even happens. I have a lot more stories to share from this exact time period as well, and I can't wait to share them all with you as a member here. Lost item reappears because it had no other choice. This started a few nights ago. I had some hand sanitizer spray, and I went to grab it out of my sling, which is inside my backpack that was on the couch. I use it and I go to bed. The next day, the sanitizer is missing. I'm annoyed at this because I specifically bought this hand sanitizer because the bottle is refillable. It's one of those flat bottles that stores nicely, and I didn't want to have to buy another one. I tore apart my bag, the backpack, and there's no trace of it. There's nothing on my couch. My house is tidy, but the sanitizer is nowhere. I mean, I'm going between the cushions, and I cannot for the life of me find it. Eventually, I just give up. I decide to restart the search today. I search my backpack, my sling, everywhere. Did I just somehow miss it? I don't know, I guess not. Once again, there isn't a trace. Then, I remember I have a Wi-Fi camera so that I can watch my pets when we're out, and it's pointed right at the couch. I decide to go and see if I can find myself spraying the hand sanitizer. After scrubbing through the video, I finally find the clip and see myself put the sanitizer into my backpack. I go check again to prove to my girlfriend that it's inexplicably disappeared, and there it is, clear as day inside the backpack when I finish. Now, I am absolutely certain that it wasn't in there. It's in the main compartment, and there was nothing else in the compartment except the hand sanitizer. It would have been downright impossible to miss. I feel like I tricked the universe into giving it back, but I'm also a little freaked out. Long days, endless tasks, and somehow we still have to stay sharp. That's where Magic Mind comes in. It's not just your average energy drink, it's packed with adaptogens, nootropics, and vitamins that help you focus better, get more done, and sleep easier at night. I've been using it for over 3 months now, and let me tell you, I'm feeling sharper, more productive, and I get into this creative flow state a lot more often. Magic Mind is designed to help you reduce stress, enhance focus, and promote better sleep without the crash that you and I get from energy drinks or coffee. It's like a little bottle of Zen for your mind. If you've been wanting to upgrade your daily routine, head over to magicmind.com and use my code ScaryStories20 for a special discount. Start feeling better, working smarter, and sleeping soundly, all with Magic Mind. That website and that code is in the description of this episode. Try it out. I think your brain will thank you. Hearing outcomes minutes before they happen. This had happened twice in my life now, and I cannot for the life of me explain it. I was sitting on my couch, watching a Sunday night football game. The game was heading into the fourth quarter, and the home team was up by 14 points. During the commercial break on ESPN, Scott Van Pelt appeared behind his announcer desk and said, "And when we return, we'll talk with Rodgers on his winning drive and 17-point comeback." I heard this clearly. I watched him say it. I thought to myself, Why would SVP say he's going to interview Rodgers if the game isn't over? Better yet, why is he assuming that they're going to win? I quickly texted my friends, who were also watching the game, and asked if they also thought it was weird that SVP announced that the Packers were going to win when the game wasn't over. Their replies were a combination of, LOL? What? And what do you mean? The fourth quarter comes, and Packers end up scoring 2 touchdowns and kicking a field goal to win. SVP interviewed Rodgers after the game, just like he said during the commercial break. I couldn't revisit this with my friends, given they had no idea what I was talking about initially. I brought it up to my wife later that night, and she couldn't wrap her head around what I was trying to explain. I still can't find an explanation for what happened. It's like I witnessed the moment before it occurred and was told the outcome. This has happened again recently during an NBA playoff game, but this time it included the final score. It happens so randomly. I compare it to deja vu, but I'm fully awake. Has anyone had any similar experiences? Mom asked me to open the door, but it wasn't her. I was about to take a quick nap on my sofa. I wasn't tired, I just had nothing to do, when someone buzzed my intercom twice. I ignored it, but since this person insisted and buzzed again, I figured it might be my mom. She had forgotten her keys that day, so I assumed it was her coming back from work. When I asked who the person was, they replied with, "Open, it's Mom." I didn't think anything of it since it was her exact same voice. I heard it clearly. I left the door to our house open and went back to my sofa. While I was waiting for her, at least 5 minutes had passed, but no one came. I thought it was weird and I called her, but she didn't answer. I got tired and decided to take my nap. When I woke up around an hour later, with the door still open by the way, I went to check and there was nobody in the house. So a couple of hours later, she comes back from work and I asked for an explanation. She said that by the time I had heard the intercom at 4 p.m., she was still at work. I explained what had happened and she was as shocked as me. She then later told me that she had received a SMS from our local post office saying that the mailman had come by our house, but no one answered. So he thought there was nobody in and left. At the same time, I had heard the intercom and actually answered. I'm not sure if this was a glitch or what, but what do you think? Trees appearing out of nowhere. Something happened not long ago, and I need to write this down in case I forget, although I'm horribly disturbed by it. If there's a mundane reason for what happened, I hope it's not because of some kind of health concern, because, well, that would suck. There are 2 roundabouts, very close together, maybe 200 yards apart, if that, which I have to drive around during the school run. They are slightly hilly, grassy verge-style islands in the road, with nothing otherwise remotely interesting about them. Or at least there wasn't until today. I drove over them on the way up, as usual. I dropped my kid off at school, and on the way back, I noticed a copse of trees on the first roundabout. And I'm like, WTF? Like, they were properly obscuring the view around the island, and they weren't there when I was driving to the school. A bit shaken, wondering what was going on, I got to the other roundabout. Same story. A similar, yet slightly younger, copse of trees somewhat obscuring the view. I carried on past my exit, going back on myself to look at the other roundabout again, and I noticed that on the way to the school, the trees obscured the view towards my exit. And normally, there's an entirely clear, unobstructed view of this. I'm now sitting in the car wondering what exactly the frosted flakes is going on. Disappearing Coca-Cola. Okay, I've been on the fence about sharing this because I'm still kind of new to this whole concept, but this story is why I joined this subreddit. When I was away at college, one night I had Chinese food and half a bottle of Coke. I put the other half in my mini fridge in my bedroom. The next night, my 2 roommates and I went grocery shopping, and I came back with a brand new bottle. I then went to my bedroom and put the bottle away, taking out my leftovers and the half bottle of Coke. As I heat up my food in the kitchen, I went back to my room to put more things away, and when I returned to the dining room, the half bottle of Coke was gone. I thought maybe I got confused and put it away, so I checked my fridge, and it was just the brand new full bottle. My roommates were in the kitchen when I had brought my leftovers, and they remember the half Coke being there too. We were all really confused. I had them help me look in case I was missing something, and we started to feel crazy, and I started to think that they were pranking me. We were tearing apart our entire apartment because we just couldn't understand. Not in any cabinets, no garbage cans, nowhere. I started to spiral, and they assured me that it's probably somewhere so random and you'll find it when we move out in May. To this day, we've never found that bottle. They remember it, and we're still very close friends, and this was about 3 years ago, and I think about it constantly, and I've made them both swear up and down that they never touched the bottle. This seems like a silly story, but it irks me to my core, and I'm convinced that it was some kind of glitch. Baking powder. Okay, so even though it's probably not the biggest deal, I'm a bit spooked. Today, I just bought a thing of baking powder because the one that I bought not long ago disappeared. I remember that I was trying to use a recipe for baking, and it called for baking powder, and when I went to go get it out of my baking cabinet, it was nowhere to be found. I looked everywhere for it for about 2 months now, even in places that I knew for sure I didn't put it, but I looked anyway. So, fast forward to the present, I said screw it, and I bought another tin of it. I just now started to put all the non-refrigerated foods away, and I went to put the new baking powder away when, you guessed it, the old one literally is just sitting there, minding its own business as if it was never moved. Immediately, I was confused, and I got creeped out because, are you serious? I've been looking so long for the damn thing for it to just show up. Of course, I grabbed it to look at it, and then I went to compare the expiration dates. They did match, but if they did, I think I would have lost it. What's even more eerie to me is that it wasn't opened when I'm sure that I've used it before. A random noise in a totally unconventional place. All Korean men are obliged to serve this country in the army for about 2 years. And when you're enlisted, you go to this facility where they train you to be a soldier for about a month. We don't have our cell phones with us. I'm ruling out a possible option later to be explained. So there's nothing more than talking to other guys to do, really. So it was after a running session where you put on your helmets and buckles while holding a gun, and you get back to your designated room with 15 other guys. It was dark. About 8 p.m., we were all exhausted and decided to take a sneaky shower even though we weren't supposed to. I was the first to do so, and me and another friend I made on the training process was there with me. I'm pretty sure I was the only one there because that friend went to fetch some water in his bottle. I lied down on the bed and looked at the window, wondering when all this crap would end. All of a sudden, I hear this weird meow sound. But this meow was so damn low, it was as if a tenor sang it. It was like a grown-ass man speaking it right into my ear. I turned my head to the right in a complete panic to see if my friend was just playing games on me. But when I looked back at the door, my friend was just coming back. Even though I said that I lied down on the bed, it isn't actually a bed. It's just a flat floor where you sleep right next to each other. The windows are closed. There shouldn't be any cell phones in this place. And even if you think someone would have snuck one in, all of our lockers were completely empty as we were moving rooms a little while later. Not like anyone would use this weird-ass sound as a ringtone either. No one was in the room except for me. Now this had me terrified for a few days after. We all had night shifts, so it made it much more worse. The good thing is that the training was so hard that it made you forget that this ever happened while during training. But sometime after it still makes me wonder what the heck that was. Missing phone at the beach glitch in the Matrix. One time, I lost my phone at the beach. My husband and I were looking for it for a long time, and he was calling me, but it made no sound. So I figured my toddler actually accidentally buried it in the sand or threw it in the ocean. This group of people next to us had metal detectors, and I didn't want to leave without my phone, so I asked them if they could please help me find my phone with their metal detectors. They sent over the spot where we were sitting multiple times and couldn't find anything. All we had was a beach wagon, and I took everything out of it and put everything back into it while I was looking for the phone. Once everyone was tired and we all gave up, I just said thank you for helping me look for my phone. It's okay. I said maybe the universe doesn't want me to find it, and then we said bye, and I felt peace about it and grateful that strangers were so nice and helpful even if I didn't find my phone. So I go to the spot where we were to lay down on the beach and relax, and my phone is sitting right on top of a folded towel. My jaw is on the floor because I just took everything out of the wagon and put it all back in, and I didn't see the phone at all. So it felt like it just appeared there in plain sight while we were looking thoroughly for it. But as soon as we stopped looking, it just appeared there. Our mailroom at work may be an interdimensional portal. The names are faked, but the story is true. No one was under the effects of any mind-altering substances, and everyone in the story is at least 27 or older. Also, it's a repost because they don't allow multiple glitches in one post. Makes me sad. I work at a medical facility as a paper pusher. This facility has 3 sites spread across a city. I'll call them Herb Street, Derp Street, and Gerp Road, although Gerp Road doesn't really feature in this story. As such, we use inter-office mail to get important documents to other locations, especially if a patient, say, drops a document on Herb Street, but their provider is located on Gerp Road. All documents are routed to the mailroom facility on Herb Street, and normal processing time for documents to get to where they need to go is anywhere from 1 to 5 business days. So, a patient walked into Herb Street on 10 September at 9:30 a.m. with a disability form from their provider, who's located at Derp Street. My fellow paper pusher, Allison, picked up the document from the front desk, put it into an interoffice envelope, emailed a copy to Maria at Derp Street, put it into the mailbox, and made a note in the patient's chart at 9:35 a.m. that the document was picked up, copy was emailed, and original was interofficed. The email copy is for insurance purposes, as very often documents get lost or just never turn up. At 10:45, Maria notes that she received the document and placed it in the provider's folder. Okay, maybe she just printed the emailed copy and gave it to the provider. No biggie. Today, 17 September, I receive an interoffice envelope addressed to Jennifer R., one of my providers that I paper push for, from Jennifer L. in the scheduling department. I open it up, and it's the original of the disability form with a sticky note that says, "I don't know why this was sent to me," in Jennifer L.'s handwriting. I check the front of the envelope and I'm confused. There's Allison's handwriting on the front, dated 10 September, and it's supposed to go to Maria to Derp Street. Just below it is Jennifer L.'s handwriting using the same envelope to send something to someone else in Herb Street, also on 10 September. Then on 12 September is Jennifer L.'s handwriting again, sending the envelope to Jennifer R. at Herb Street, the same envelope that ends up at my desk. Big deal, right? People reuse envelopes all the time. What's the glitch? Remember the whole 1 to 5 day business turnaround I mentioned? It really does take that long because all the documents go into several bins to be sorted. One big bin for all locations and several smaller bins for each individual location. It's not very likely the envelope could have fallen out of a bin and they reused it the same day without realizing it wasn't empty. All lines on the envelope are crossed off as they're used, and Allison's handwriting was the latest on the envelope at the time that it would have been used by Jennifer L. It would have been difficult to miss that this envelope contained something as it was tied shut, too. I checked with Maria if she still needed the disability form, and she stated that she didn't. The form was filled out by the provider, and the patient just needed to pick it up. She showed me a picture of the document she received. The patient used blue ink on my form to write their name, and he has distinctive handwriting. On Maria's form, the patient had used black ink to write his information in, but they all freaking matched. Down to the swoop of the T's and the way he drew his R's. Same slant to the letters too. Same date on the form. The only way it could have been this exact was if it was photocopied or traced. I asked Maria, and she did not print the form. She said she received the form, put the empty envelope into a bucket for the next time someone needed to enter her office something, and then handed the form to her provider. So, how could a form that takes 1 to 5 business days be teleported across the city in 1 hour? How could an empty envelope that Maria confirmed was empty and in a bin near her desk suddenly have a form inside of it, with the handwriting of someone who is halfway across the city, sending something to someone else halfway across the city, and spend 1 week in limbo before making its way to me? Chiropractor? I'm changing the name of the office and the name of the route in this story, but everything else is the truth. I'm a nurse, I work overnights, and lately I've been suffering from increased back and neck pain. I've never Googled the pain or chiropractor, but I am a patient at a practice that I've been with intermittently for over 15 years. I've not been to the practice in, I believe, over 5 years. 2 days ago, on September 9th, I got what appeared to be an automated text from my chiropractor asking me to make an appointment with them as they hadn't seen me in a while. I thought this was a very convenient coincidence, but it did strike me as odd because my chiropractor is very successful and busy and usually has a month-long wait time. The text message that I had received addressed me by my name, and I have a somewhat unique name. I asked them if they had anything available tomorrow, September 11th, and they responded with 3 appointment times, and I selected the one at 3 p.m. They said, "Okay, we'll see you at 3. September 11 comes, and I wake up for the day slightly early, as I must have been subconsciously worried about being late to my appointment. My chiropractor is located on Route 153, and to get there, I have to head south on 153, and the chiropractor is located on the north side of Route 153. The name of the chiropractor office that texted me is 153 Chiropractic, which would make sense as that's where the office is located, on Route 153. Because I had to travel southbound to get to the office, I decided to punch in my office to the GPS to get me there, as I wanted to see if there was an easier way to travel there. When I typed in the name 153 Chiropractic, no results in the area populated. I didn't think much of it. I knew how to get there, and I was just looking for a shortcut. On the way there, it starts to bother me that the office didn't populate on the GPS, so I decided to Google 153 Chiropractic. No results in my area for that name. But there is an office located in Kentucky by that name, and I'm in Massachusetts. I Googled 153 Chiropractic MA to see if anything else would come up. The chiropractor that I attended did populate, but under the name of North County Chiropractic. A little confused, I carried on into the office, and sure enough, it's called North County, but located on 153. I proceed into the office, I wait in line, and I speak to the receptionist to confirm that I do have an appointment. She recognizes me and says that it's been a while, but she knows for a fact that I don't have an appointment today. She checks, and sure enough, no appointment. I double-checked the text that I got. I had the correct date and time. I explained the situation to her, and she said, "You know, it's funny because we only have 2 patients with your first name, and the other one was just here yesterday at 3. She explains that it could have just been a glitch in their automated messaging system, confirms that they have the correct number for me, and makes a new appointment and sends me on my way. I get back to my car. I'm unfazed by the situation because I understand things happen. but I was confused by the chiropractor office from the text having a different name for the office. I look at the number that texted me, and it's a Kentucky-based number. I texted the number that had made me the appointment and asked where they were located, but I never got a response. I called the number, and it was an instant automated voicemail. I Google the name of the chiropractor and I find their number, which is also Kentucky-based but just in a different county, and I call them to warn them that I may have made an appointment with them that I was not going to be at. The number goes to their voicemail, which was an average-sounding voicemail for a chiropractor's office, but no one answers. The office never attempted to call me to say I missed the appointment or ask to reschedule. I've never been to Kentucky, never mind a small-town chiropractor office there. The text message they sent me used my name, and the other person with my same name had an appointment at my chiropractor the day before at the same time. I don't know. There's too many oddities in this situation to be explained other than a glitch in the Matrix. Do you have any ideas? Mountain glitch. I have an interesting story from a few years back. I was living in southern Washington and would often kayak on this lake where you had a very clear view of two large mountains. I had a favorite spot that I liked to kayak out to where I'd sit and just enjoy the view. I had a weird experience on the lake one day where it got extremely cloudy and very windy suddenly. The lake became very choppy, and I paddled in one spot for almost an hour, trying desperately to get to shore, but I couldn't get my kayak to move. Although it appeared that I was moving through the water, based on the point of reference of the shore, I wasn't moving. This aside, most other days out there were normal and relaxed. One day, I went to the lake to kayak, but I went to a different parking lot / access point than I was used to. But I intentionally paddled over to my favorite spot. As I was approaching my spot, I noticed that you very clearly could not see the two very large mountains as usual. I thought maybe I was too far away and the mountains were under the horizon or something. But as I reached my spot, the mountains were nowhere in sight. I had many very clear landmarks that told me I knew that I was looking in the right direction. The mountains are very close to this lake, and before you guys say it, visibility was perfect. There were no clouds. The mountains just simply weren't there. Running back, on the day where it became very cloudy and windy that I mentioned before, you could still see the mountains. It was the eeriest thing. It's as if the mountains grew legs and just walked away. I had two other friends with me who frequented this lake with me, who confirmed the entire story and also couldn't explain it. To this day, I'm sure that I entered a parallel universe or that lake was just some kind of earth vortex. Anyone else ever experience anything similar? Did I shift timelines, or am I losing my mind? I'm new to this subreddit, and I don't really know much about these things, but I can't help but feel uneasy about all of this. For the type of work that I do, I have to write newsletters giving updates on my work to supporters back in my home country. I have a folder on my PC where I just reuse my old template every time and generally label them according to the season. I then save a PDF version and email that out to a big group of people. Last night, however, I started writing autumn, and as I opened the last one to save it under a new name, I realized that summer was just a copy of spring, with the name changed in the left corner of the first page, and no other changes. Weird. Especially because we get a lot of power cuts and my PC often crashes, so I save every other minute out of habit whenever I work on my computer. I remember writing my last letter, summer, in clear details. Like the pictures I used, the feedback on the training that I had in Singapore, my friend moving away after her graduation that was very hard for me, even emailing the letter and getting responses from people encouraging me. I even did a deep search on my PC and I couldn't find the completed document, nor its saved PDF version, and no email trace either. No one knows what I'm talking about. I feel like I'm losing my mind. How does this even happen? What's going on? Saw 2 different versions of the same guy in a row. Not sure if this fits. I just thought it was kind of weird/fun and wanted to share. So, I'm riding my bike home, which is just a straight road. I pass a guy who catches my attention. He's some older dude with short white hair and a small beard. I didn't pay attention to his clothing, but he had pretty noticeable Walkman headphones on and 2 white/cream colored medium-sized dogs on a leash. He caught my attention because of the dogs and because he was smiling and had no teeth. Like smiling with an open mouth, but you couldn't see any teeth. And he was staring at me. I have a lot of tattoos. Many people stare at me. It's not super weird. So I ride past him in snail speed because it's uphill, and I didn't think much. Literally, less than 5 minutes later, I ride past the same damn guy. But this time with no beard and in-ear headphones and 2 dark brown/black medium-sized dogs. He again caught my attention because he smiled at me with an open mouth, toothless smile, long eye contact too, and his features were just identical. Like, my best explanation would really be that they were twins. I was completely baffled by not only him looking the same, but also having the bizarro versions of the dogs and the headphones with him. Super weird moment. I don't know. I still think about it, and I haven't seen him or them since. Somebody in the comments said, "A Walkman?" Birds flew into my room and suddenly appeared even though the window isn't broken. After lurking for a few months, I finally decided to share a rather bizarre experience that occurred to me when my husband and I first purchased our home 2 years ago. To give you some context, my office is located at the back of the house, facing the garden, and it has a door that leads directly outside. In most homes, you might expect to find a backyard door from the kitchen, but in our layout, you have to pass through the kitchen and into my office before reaching the garden. My workspace is directly in front of 2 windows and gets a lot of natural light. While I keep them closed, I do open the blinds to let in the sunlight. However, I never pull them up just for privacy. A little detail to keep in mind. I work from home while my husband heads into the office once a week. One afternoon, as I was working, I suddenly heard a rustling noise coming from the bottom of my blinds to the window on the left. And to my utter surprise, a bird the size of my fist was flapping around, completely startled and flinging itself against the blinds. Now, let me clarify. My window, was shut tight. There was absolutely no way for this bird to have entered through the glass. Did it somehow slip through a wormhole? I immediately FaceTimed my husband to show him what was happening. He witnessed the chaos unfolding on his screen as I tried to keep myself together. Grabbing a broom to hopefully push out the bird, I lifted the blinds and opened the backyard door. The bird quickly spotted the exit and flew out into the garden. In hindsight, I wish I had taken a photo of this little visitor. However, at that moment, I was too shaken up, and I didn't want a reminder of such an unexpected fright. Once I had calmed down and caught my breath, I took a closer look at the blinds and window ledge. There were small feathers scattered from its frantic flapping. I wiped down everything with Clorox, wanting to ensure that any trace of our unexpected encounter was gone. Upon further inspection, I confirmed that there were no holes in either the window or the mesh. Even after stepping outside to check for any signs of damage, everything appeared intact. It remains a mystery how that little bird managed to make its way into my office without breaking in. This experience left me both bewildered and amused. I'm glad that I FaceTimed my husband at the time so it wasn't just me imagining anything. If anyone has any theories about how this could have happened or similar stories to share, I'd love to hear them. My old house. So this is more of a list of weird incidents that happened in my previous house. For reference, I live in Singapore, a SEA country, meaning Asian culture and beliefs are what the general populace allowed. Also, here in SG, most of us stay in government-built apartment housing. I say all this because when my parents bought the place long ago, we had a next-door neighbor whose job was being a Taoist medium. He had since moved out, but before, my parents had seen him performing rituals along the corridors with chickens, dogs, and occasionally random women dressed in black. My mom swore that she heard chains and screams from her room late at night, and my brother and I would often have to spend the night at my grandmother's if a ritual was taking place to prevent us from being too exposed to it. Anyway, like I mentioned, the guy moved out eventually and his daughter moved in. All around good-natured family, all things considered. Nothing weird from them and very friendly. But even after he left and the rituals stopped, my family would continually get disturbed by incidences that we couldn't really explain. I'll go chronologically. As an infant, I would apparently stare at the balcony lights when they were off and scream like no tomorrow. According to my parents, I would be inconsolable and pointing at the lights screaming. Perhaps a child's imagination, though? Who can tell? My brother and I would often hear a woman sobbing and weeping in the corridor that led to our toilet. It would always begin around 2 a.m., but we never had the balls to go check it out, and fell asleep eventually, so I can't tell you when it ended usually. Another thing, we would constantly see shadows gliding up the staircase into what would eventually be my room, and we'd stare at them without blinking until they disappeared. Their behavior never changed. Another incident was when I was 17. I had a friend over late working on a school project, and it was pretty quiet, other than our small comments to each other on what to change. All of a sudden, we heard a knock on the coffee table next to us, and someone, male, said loudly, "Hello? Excuse me?" My friend just stood up and said something similar to, "Well, it's late. Time for me to head back." And he did. I just booked it upstairs and dove into bed. My brother was alone one day in the house and he decided to have a shower. While bathing, he heard my mom calling for him from downstairs. It went something like this. "Hey, can you come down and help me?" He says, "I'm in the shower." Mom says, "It's really heavy. Just quickly come and take it." He goes, okay. So he towels himself quickly and runs down, only to see that my mom and my aunt just turning into the driveway. I clarified with him afterwards that no, she did not in fact say anything or come home for that matter until just then. Another thing, we would often hear footsteps running in the apartment above us, starting from as early as 9 p.m. until late into the night. They were most definitely bare feet, but light enough that you could still mistake them for children playing. The closest way I can describe it is that the kids were doing their shuttle run practice, and we could tell by the squeaks their feet made when they pivoted around. I once played Christian hymns when I heard it, in an attempt to ward it off, but apparently the sounds seemed to escalate, becoming like there were 3 kids instead of 1 up there running around. My brother, who worked as a real estate agent after we grew up, went to the house above under the guise of checking if they wanted their house sold. No one was in, so he checked with some of his colleagues, and apparently one of them actually was actively trying to get it sold already. The owner's mom was supposed to live in that house, but due to mental issues was already staying in a mental hospital for a long period of time. And no, she did not have any young kids in the house, and no, she did not do any vigorous exercises due to her age. That's all I can think of at this point. Maybe I'll add more in another post if I can remember them. Cheers. Board game reappears. My boyfriend and I were looking for a game that we always play. It's called Roll for the Galaxy. We have all of our board games on shelves in the basement, and we were looking for that particular game. It wasn't there. We both looked on the shelves multiple times, and we looked down there separately, and both on multiple occasions and different days. We just couldn't find it. We assumed that maybe he lent it to one of his friends. It came up in conversation from time to time, with us just being a little bit sad that it was gone. It actually became a thing with us, talking about where it went. He ended up even texting a bunch of friends to see if they had it. Side note, on the shelves, it was clear that we had the game Race for the Galaxy, but not Roll for the Galaxy, the one that we enjoy a lot more. So, one day, I was down in the basement, checking our freezer to see what we had since we were having guests over, and I had been reading this subreddit a bunch, so I thought to myself, you know what? I bet if I check the shelves, the game will be there. I checked, and it was. I called my boyfriend immediately to come and look, and he's a super rational person, but he couldn't believe it. He was freaked out. I have a picture to show how easily it's spotted on the shelves, and there's no way that we both could have missed it after pouring through the games one by one. I can post a pic in the comments to show how easily viewable it is. It's a bit spooky, and honestly, I keep on thinking that it might disappear. Whenever I go down to the basement, I do a bit of an eyeball check to make sure it's still there. Again, I just don't see how we could have missed it at all. I swear, it was not there before. I spoke to a ghost today. While walking through International Peace Gardens in Glendale, Utah, I noticed an elderly couple sitting on a bench facing away from me. As I walked around, I saw the sweet little lady get up and walk around some bushes by the path I was on. She passed me and said, "Hi." I said hello back, and as I walked around the bushes, this little old Hispanic man was still talking. He looked up at me and kind of giggled and said that he was just talking to his wife. I replied, "Well, she just left to go to your car or something." I thought it was funny. This little old man still talking to himself, not realizing that she had walked away. He looks at me and in his broken English tells me that she left a couple of years ago, that she died. Surprised, I said, "Wait, I just said hi to her." He immediately pulled out his wallet and showed me pictures of her and explained to me how that was her favorite place in the world. It blew me away and brought me to tears. I sat with the man for a few minutes while he showed me more pictures of her, and then his kids and his grandkids, and how proud and happy he was even though she was gone. He told me he still goes there because he can feel that she's still there. I had to agree because those pictures were of that sweet little old lady who said hi as she passed me. Saw a woman literally glitch this morning. Every morning, I have the same routine, more or less. This morning, my routine was no different. I ran up to my local gas station to buy an energy drink. It's something I've done, thousands of times. But this morning, I encountered something for the first time. A real-life time glitch. It's taken me hours to process what I saw, and even still, I have no idea how, or I guess why it happened. But here's what happened. I got to the store and parked my car, and I walked into the store like I do every day. I noticed there are 3 others in line, which is pretty normal for the time that I usually go. I moved past them and head towards the cooler that has the drink that I want. I open the cooler and grab it, and I make my way to stand in line to pay, roughly 30-ish seconds from the time I walked into the door. The first guy pays for his Black and Milds and his lotto ticket and exits the store. The second person is a mom, and her school-aged child is in tow. They're getting apple juice and what I assume is a little snack for the child before school. They pay, everything's fine, and they head towards the exit. Normal. Everything's normal. But then, the third person gets to the counter. She's a middle-aged woman, and she asks the clerk for a pack of menthol cigarettes. She lifts her hand to point at the pack she wants, and then suddenly, about 3/4 of the way through the movement, she stops. And not stops as in like she just stopped moving her arm, but stops as if she was frozen in time, eerily. I look around. The lady and her child are getting into their car. Cars are driving by on the main road. And I look back at the lady in front of me, and she's still not moving. Not even her clothing is moving. I inspect even further, and she doesn't appear to even be breathing. She's just standing there, like she's perfectly frozen in time, like someone hit the pause button. It feels like 10 seconds go by, and then the clerk says, "Ma'am?" No response from the woman. Again, the clerk asks, "Ma'am?" with even more concern in his voice. But again, No response. He looks to me in a way that says, "What the F is going on here?" And I look back at him in a way that says, "Dude, I have no idea." Another 10 seconds go by. She's still just standing there, motionless in this awkward position. I start thinking, oh, damn, is this lady having like a bad drug reaction? Or is she having a stroke? I feel a little off and panicky about the situation. I then chime in and say, "Ma'am, are you okay?" But she's still unresponsive and motionless. Then, a few seconds later, after asking if she was okay, and this is what actually freaked me out to the max, the lady starts moving and speaking, but not in a normal manner. No, that could maybe be explained. But this lady literally started moving like someone had just hit the fast forward button. Her arm finished the upwards movement. She pointed at the smokes that she wanted, and in an instant, as if several frames had just skipped, her arm was back down at her side. And then the position of her entire body changed without moving. And then, noise, as opposed to words. Noise that sounded very much like super sped up audio came out of her mouth. The look of complete shock on the clerk's face let me know that he heard the same thing I just did. But then, just like that, everything went back to normal. The clerk scanned the pack of smokes. She pulled out her credit card at a normal speed and paid for them, and then she left. Like nothing strange at all just happened. After the lady left the store, the clerk looked at me and said, "Damn, dude, I need to stop taking drugs. That was crazy." To which I could only reply with, "I feel you. Maybe I need to stop too." But for the record, I wasn't under the influence of any drugs that morning. Needless to say, nothing about the event was normal. I can't for the life of me figure out how something like that could have happened, other than it was an actual glitch. Really. But I don't know. Maybe you just had to be there to understand. This person includes an edit that says, "To everyone who's saying that what I witnessed was a seizure, I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I really don't think so. The way her body movements seemed to skip frames and just be on fast forward seemed very unnatural. But I don't know, maybe that's something that also happens with seizures?" Here's an update. I got up 2 hours early to go to the store and ask the clerk if they had a video from the events that happened yesterday. He informed me that they should, but that he has no access to the room or to the laptop that contains the surveillance videos and that only the store owner can access them. He then informed me that the store owner wouldn't be in until later in the day. He said he'd ask the owner to review the tape from yesterday. I also asked the clerk to describe to me what he saw, and he said, "Dude, that lady looked like someone hit pause and then her server lagged." When I asked him if he thinks it could have been a seizure, he said he didn't know, but maybe. Here's a second update that says, "I went back to the store during my lunch break. The store owner was there, as the clerk and I know, but the owner was sort of a butthead towards me. He wouldn't let me go to the back to see the video, even after offering him a 20, and he said he wouldn't give me a copy of the video either because, quote, "I won't compromise my store's security for internet cred, and I won't open myself up for potential legal liability," end quote. He also said that if the lady was really having a stroke or seizure, it would be protected health information, and he couldn't release it without a warrant or authorization from the woman. I don't know. That all sounds like straight BS to me though, but I don't know the law, so maybe he's right. I wasn't going to argue. I did speak to the clerk again, and he said that he got to see the video from over the owner's shoulder. But he said it really just looked like the lady stood still at the counter for about 40 seconds with her arm most of the way lifted up, and then paid for her item. None of the weird, fast-forward, frame drop, glitchy moments were apparent upon watching the video. Transported from a public bathroom. This just happened to my husband. It's so wild, but he wanted me to share it here. We were shopping at an outlet mall, and I went inside Starbucks to charge my phone for a second. I was sitting in a chair right beside the restrooms charging my phone. I'm directly beside it, so there's absolutely no way that I could miss anyone walking in or out. They would have had to have walked directly in front of me to get out, and they would be in my field of vision clearly the second they came out of the door as well. My husband went to use the restroom. I saw him go in. Directly in front of me is a clear view of the entire rest of the restaurant. The counter, the main dining room including a large table with about 5 people sitting on laptops doing work. I'm staring forward when suddenly I see him seemingly plop right onto the floor, onto his butt, kind of by the large table. The way my eyes made sense of it initially, it almost seemed like he fell or something because he was on the floor. But he never came out of the bathroom. He never walked past me. He just sort of appeared. I run up and I ask if he's okay, and he looks to be in extreme distress and says things like, "That was crazy. Let's go." It took him a while to collect himself, and he was almost unable to talk, but he said he had to say what happened. He said he went in, used the bathroom, and afterwards he washed his hands and leaned against the wall. And the next thing he knows, he's in the main sitting area on the floor. It was crazy. I'm still trying to make sense of it myself. Has anyone else ever had a similar experience? Let me know. Hey, it's me. If you're enjoying the stories and you're watching on YouTube, click the subscribe button. Or if you're listening to the show on something like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or iHeartRadio, then click the follow button and leave a review so that others might know how much you enjoy the show, and maybe it'll help them find the show too. I've got a lot more stories to read. Let's keep going. Something really weird happened today while at the bank. I don't know what to make of it, and I'm still weirded out. I was going to the bank to deposit some cash. Nothing out of the ordinary, just walking to my bank as I always do. Then this dude with his kid walks past me, walking in the opposite direction. The man was wearing a black shirt with a white tiger symbol. He had shorts on and sandals. I wouldn't give it a second thought if what happened next didn't happen. So we walked past each other, and by now my bank is in front of me, maybe like 10 meters or 33 feet, and I don't see anyone enter or exit the bank. But as I walk in, I'm immediately dumbfounded. The man with the same exact clothes, holding his kid's hand, is standing in front of me at the bank. Literally in front of me. Same clothes, same sandals, same tiger. He was holding his kid's hand. Now, there's no way in hell as to how he got there before me because he just walked past me, walking away from the bank. And the other thing that was weird is that he gave me the exact same weird and confused look that I gave him. Confused, and he did a double take looking at me as he was leaving the bank. So yeah, this happened maybe 7 hours ago, and I'm still confused and a little shaken. Any thoughts or explanations? I really would love some kind of rational explanation for this, but I can't seem to find one. This person includes an edit that says, "Tomorrow, I'll go to the bank and record a video of my POV where I saw them and where I entered the bank. I'll try to record inside the bank as well. If you're interested in seeing the vid, just DM me and I'll send it." There's a second edit that says, "Since a lot of people have been saying that it could have been twin pranksters, I think it's worth mentioning that I live in a town of 20,000 people in southeastern Europe, and we don't really have any pranksters or YouTubers here. It's kinda depressing, actually. Most of the people are moving to Western Europe, and there's not a lot of people left, so I don't think it's pranksters. Because if it was, we would for sure know them because it would be a sensation to have any kind of content creator in this town. I don't want to share any personal details, but if anyone here DMs me, I could share what particular city I live in." Weird incident that happened to me years ago. I just found this sub, and this is a story that I've been dying to tell since I think about it all the time. I was on a small road trip. My two friends and I were going across state lines to drop one of them off at home. It's later at night, very dark out, and no moon. We're driving down the highway with no other cars around. We're running out of gas, so we pull over to a station and we fill up. This is when it gets weird. We start driving, and I glance at the clock. It's nearly 2 a.m., and this was maybe 15 years ago, so we only had the radio clock. The radio clock sucked and would just randomly die on us. The whole radio would, actually. We're driving down the road for maybe a half hour when we hit some fog. The radio starts going nuts and dies. We just shrug it off and we keep going. The place we were going to was only 2 hours away from the gas station, so we figured it wasn't a big deal and we could just chat instead of listen to music. 2 hours pass. No cars, no lights, no gas stations. It was like we were in a place that doesn't exist. The fog was still around too, and we were starting to get worried that maybe we got lost. We fussed with the radio some more to try to get it to turn back on, but it wouldn't. Another hour of driving, and we spot lights in the distance. It was a gas station. Suddenly, the fog lifted, and as we pulled into the gas station, we realized this is the exact same gas station that we filled up at 3 hours ago. The radio turned on as we pulled in, too. 3 a.m. now. But we were definitely gone for much longer than that. We tried to reason it. Maybe we somehow just, I don't know, went in a circle? Maybe this wasn't the same gas station? We got back in the car and we left, but we never hit the fog again, and we did make it to my friend's place in 2 hours. To this day, I think about this and I can't explain it. It was the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to me. There were some questions in the comments that include, do you have any receipts from both fill-ups, with the timestamps or the address or even the store location on it? OP responds with no. Unfortunately, they didn't get any receipts at Phillips, as it was just a quick gas up and go. And we were reminded that this was from 15 years ago, so checking receipts or confirming statements, largely out of the question. People froze in a cable car. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I took a trip to the mountains with my cousin and his wife. We decided to go up the mountain on a cable car. It was a single cabin that fits about 40 people. On the way down, we were waiting for departure in a full car, and we were standing in the very front. There was a lot of chatter and music playing in the cabin when suddenly everything went dead silent. We looked back to see what was happening, and everybody on board was just staring forward, completely expressionless. This went on for a few seconds until suddenly everything went back to normal. People resumed their conversations, and the music came back on. My wife and I were really confused, and once we got out of the car, we regrouped with my cousin. We asked them what the heck happened back there, but they said that they didn't notice anything weird happening, and then they gave us a funny look. We're all still a little puzzled. A driving glitch. So, the other night, I was driving to my mom's house. I looked down at my GPS and it said ETA 2 minutes. I then look up and suddenly I'm back on the highway and my GPS says ETA 30 minutes. And no time had passed. It's weird, maybe, but I sometimes space out and I miss an exit that I thought I had already gotten off of. I didn't think much of it. Then, exactly 2.5 minutes later, as I was supposed to be arriving, my mother calls and goes, "Hey, can you bring down XYZ?" I was like, "Oh, I think I missed my exit. It's going to be a while." She laughs and says, "Funny, just bring it down." I insist to her that I'm not there, and she says, "But I saw your headlights, I heard your keys in the door, and I heard you say, 'Hi, Mom.' And the dogs were also at the door going crazy like they do." I told her to check the driveway. She does. She gets scary quiet and says, "I gotta sit down." It turns out she was on the phone with my sister when it happened, and to this day, my sister swears that she also heard me say, "Hi, Mom," and then heard the door slam shut. Is this a glitch in the Matrix? Where was I when that happened? Who was that they heard and saw? I'm still wondering if my son teleported or something after 4 years. This happened about 4 years ago, and I'm still so confused by the events of that night. I had just put my then 8-year-old son to bed. He has autism. When I remembered the tooth fairy had duty to attend to that night, so I sat in my room waiting for him to fall asleep. The apartment was completely quiet, other than the dryer running, and I heard a little bell noise, like you hear on a kitten collar or something. I thought maybe something had fallen off the dryer, but no. I peeked at the stairs that led up to my kids' rooms, and the baby gate was still up on the stairs. And for some reference, this baby gate is loud. Anytime we took it down or put it up, it would creak loudly. And also, you really couldn't avoid banging it all over the walls in the small hallways upstairs. Even though I could see the gate was still up, and I would have seen if anyone had walked down the stairs, as my bedroom door directly faces the bottom of the stairs, I decided to go up and check on the kids anyway. I checked my daughter's room, and she's fine, she's sleeping. I checked my son's room, and he's not there. On his bed is a carton of ice cream that's still very cold and fresh. I mean, it's not melted at all. The first thing that I think is, oh, he must have heard me coming and is hiding because he thinks he's gonna be in trouble for taking the ice cream. So I start calling for him. I check his closet, thinking that he's for sure in there, but when I don't see him, my heart starts to race. I check the bathroom, he's not there. I start running down the stairs and I can see in the living room window a neighbor walking him back to my apartment, which, retrospectively thinking, I don't know how they knew which apartment because my son did not and still doesn't have the speaking skills to be able to give that information. I ran out and grabbed him, no pants and all, and just began to weep in pure relief. I still cannot figure out this night. I mean, it haunts me. There should have been no way that I would have missed him walking down the stairs, especially with the loud gate and with our very loud freezer. I should have heard him getting the ice cream as well. The ice cream was so fresh looking as it sat on his bed, too. I don't know, I'm still stumped. I try to ask him about it, but for now, he's unable to tell me much. Did the son quietly sneak out of the window? Well, unlikely. The bedroom is on the second floor of an already tall apartment complex, and beneath the window is rocks. Plus, when the OP returned their son back to bed, they noted the window was closed and the screen was still intact as well. So no, son did not quietly sneak out through the window. Another concern that was raised in the comments was about the neighbor. Someone suggested that the neighbor actually snuck into the apartment with the intent to take the boy, maybe using the ice cream as a quick way to build trust. But then, how did the neighbor and the boy both leave the house quietly without waking up the OP, which their bedroom is right by the front door as noted? That's a mystery. Me, personally, I'm left with two big takeaways on this story, and the first one is, I'm glad the son is back home and safe. The second thing is, what was that bell sound that woke up the OP in the first place? Somebody in the comments suggested maybe it was the spoon intended for the ice cream hitting the floor, but OP confirmed that there was no spoon on site. So, what was that bell sound? According to my mom, I was a creepy child, and the weird things didn't stop. I was too young to remember some of this, but according to my mom, when I was around 3 or 4, she saw and heard things centered around me. For example, in our first house, she slept downstairs. I had a bedroom upstairs, and she'd frequently hear noises like glass breaking, doors opening, and when she'd check on me, nothing would be out of place. She also said that I was talking to someone, playing board games, and occasionally she'd find me sitting and staring into closets or just into the wall. One night, she checked on me and she swore that she saw red eyes in my window. A window that doesn't face any streets, by the way. She started sleeping upstairs after that and things calmed down. Then, I started to hear the voices downstairs. My mom would wake up to find me standing at the top of the stairs in the middle of the night, staring into the darkness. I swore that someone was calling me, telling me to come downstairs. I remember there was a dark shadow sometimes in the corner of the living room where no shadow could have possibly been cast. When I got a few years older, I remember having two recurring dreams. One where I'd killed the family in a car accident, and the other was something digging its way up from the ground outside my window. We moved shortly after, but it didn't stop. In the next house, I was visited constantly by a woman wearing white that would stand outside my bedroom door at night. Even if I didn't look at her, I could still feel her there. But I never told my mom about her. Again, we moved. It's unrelated to that. But this place was the worst of them all. Even the neighbors said that the property was spooky, stating that you'd occasionally catch a glimpse of a woman in an old farming dress and a man with no features out of the corner of your eye. I knew he was there because you could just suddenly feel absolute terror. Although my neighbors saw them, they said they never felt scared by them. But he seemed to take a liking to me. I always felt him when I'd walk past the old barn to catch the bus in the morning. One day, my dog ran into the basement of the barn, and when I went to get her, I heard footsteps quickly making their way to the stairs, then heading down. They got pretty close to the bottom, but there was no one there. I ran out of there so fast. He was in the house once. I could feel him standing on the other side of my door one day when I came home from school. Everything stopped the day that I got my first period. No joke. It was like a switch had been turned off and a door was suddenly put up in my brain. Honestly, even though most of the experiences were terrifying, I felt so alone. Things never happened again until I visited a graveyard almost 13 years later. That's when things got really weird. My friend wanted to be an amateur ghost hunter, and I had just been through a breakup. We went to a Civil War cemetery in the middle of a night. His friend lived on the property about 50 feet from it. We brought equipment and the like, but nothing seemed to be happening. I had to go to the bathroom, so I went back to the house, used the restroom, and headed back. I could see my friend's flashlights in the distance at the edges of the property near some woods. As I was at the first row of graves, I got horribly nauseous. It was so bad that I stumbled to the ground, holding my stomach, trying to scream. The wind had been blowing pretty good all night, but it picked up with such force, and at that moment, it was like someone grabbed my head and held me down, forcing me to crawl toward one of the graves in front of me. I tried everything to stand up, but I couldn't. I used the stone to pull myself up, and I was kneeling at a grave. I couldn't move anymore. All I could do was read the words on the stone. At that moment, someone whispered in my ear, "Louder." It took everything that I had, but I managed to scream the name on the tombstone. And then it all stopped. The wind, the nauseousness, the pressure, totally gone. I looked around. My friends were still messing around at the edge of the woods. I managed to get back to them, and I told them what happened. They said they saw me, but I was just kneeling at a grave. They didn't hear anything. We tried to take some readings, pictures, and recordings at the stone, but we got nothing. I only remember that the name on the grave was Jesse. And I'm not friends with that guy anymore, so I can't ask him the full name. I do remember that we were able to find him and he was a soldier, but there was nothing unusual about his death. Oh, and when I was kneeling at the grave of an infant and its mom, I got nauseous again, and I felt fingers push my knees back as if someone was pushing me off the grave. I felt like I was the mom protecting her child. That was 17 years ago. Other than a couple of nauseous experiences at a funeral and at someone's home, nothing weird has happened since. I haven't gone to any cemeteries or supposed haunted sites either. Fun fact: when my mom was a teenager, her best friend was killed in a car accident. Before she received the phone call, she felt like someone was in her house. When the phone rang, that feeling disappeared. She said her friend would have never left without saying goodbye, and I am named after her. Infinite pizza glitch. Hey Derek, here's my glitch that I posted on Reddit. It's nothing too scary or crazy, but certainly weird. My eaten pizza leftovers reappeared in the fridge. I feel like I'm going nuts. Last night, I cooked and ate a Jack's frozen pizza for dinner. There were 2 small slices left over that I put away into the fridge on my bluey plate on the bottom shelf. There's nothing important about the plate other than it's distinctive, and I only have a single one. I woke up this morning and decided to put the leftovers into the air fryer. I left them in a little too long while I meticulously sliced a bagel sideways. What can I say? I like thin bagel discs. Anyway, my pizza slices were cooked a little too well done, and part of the cheese slid off and baked onto the rack. Not having any time to clean it then and there, I left it and figured I'd clean it when I got home in the evening. I eat my pizza slices and my bagel, I put my bluey plate in the sink, and I go on about my day. I came home this evening and opened the fridge to get some water. There are 2 leftover pizza slices sitting in the fridge in the exact same place that I left them, right on the bluey plate. The same bluey plate that I put in the sink earlier. I was so lost. I ate these slices too, though. I looked in the sink and the dirty dishes were still in there, but my bluey plate was nowhere to be found. I opened the air fryer and sure enough, there was the charred cheese on the rack. I don't know what manifested these pizza slices into existence again after I already ate them, but I'm definitely not eating them a second time. I always try to not waste food, but given that I've already not wasted these leftovers, I think I'll give myself a pass today. Jason. Infinite pizza. God, that's my kind of glitch right there. Also, we have one single bluey plate as well, because our 2 kids love that show. And Bandit, he's dad goals. We're not done yet. It was just gone. A few months ago, in May of 2024, my family and I were driving home from a weekend out of town when something strange happened that neither one of us can explain, and we've thought about it every day since. My husband was driving, my toddlers were in the middle row, and I was set up in the front with my husband. It was a Monday morning around rush hour, and we were driving home from Hilton Head back to Savannah. The traffic was a little thick, as you'd expect at this time, but it was a typical morning. As we're getting closer to home, we pointed out to the kids that we could see part of the Savannah skyline and the big Talmadge Bridge. I remarked to my husband that it was strange that Waze said that we still had 23 minutes to get to our home, because that seemed longer than it should have. I've driven the route many times, and at that point, with typical morning traffic, it should have only taken about 10 to 12 minutes from where we were. I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was weird and chalked it up to being in traffic. A minute or two later, as we were getting closer to the bridge, there's a strait of construction/road work going on both sides of the road, but primarily happening directly off of the right lane. We slowed down by about 10 to 15 miles per hour, but the construction didn't impede the flow of traffic by any means. There were 3 cranes ahead of us. They were the kind of cranes that are controlled from the bottom. I think they're called crawlers. One of them was much bigger than the other 2. I mean, it was so big that I stopped mid-conversation with my husband to point it out to our girls. "Wow, girls, look at that big crane." To which they both responded, "Wow," or something like that. I remember them excitedly acknowledging that they saw it. I finished the sentence that I had been in the middle of to my husband, and then I directed my attention to the side mirror to get another eye shot of the crane. It wasn't there. My eyes immediately darted to the rearview mirror to see if I could see it there, and I noticed my husband looking a little confused also. "Where did it go?" I said, sort of panicky. I completely turned my body around to look out all of the windows, but that crawler just wasn't there. I don't remember if the other 2 were there or not, but I know for a fact that the big one that we should have been passing wasn't. My husband, who's a very logical and composed individual, seemed equally as puzzled and said, "I don't see it. It should be right there. We should have been passing it." I continued to stare at, or through, the side mirror as we drove over the bridge and into town. The rest of the drive was quiet, as I assume we were both just trying to process what happened. That stretch of highway is flat, marshy, and a coastal plain area. There's no tall trees or buildings around where our view of the crane would have been obstructed. And there's also no way that the crane could have been lowered to an almost entirely flat position in the short span of time, especially without any of us seeing it. There isn't a day that goes by that it doesn't get brought up between us. I mean, we've considered every possibility imaginable, and we just can't explain it. Part of me wonders if noticing the time versus distance on Waze a few minutes prior is also related, but that could have just been a coincidence. I kicked myself later for not thinking to check the time when we got home. I feel like we question everything now. Whatever happened has left an impression on both of us. It's not necessarily an unsettling feeling, but just kind of strange. It weighs heavy on my curious mind every day, and I'd figured I'd put it out there to see if anyone has experienced anything similar. Have you? Grid. I searched for and found this thread specifically just to talk about what I saw last night. I was with my friend and we were watching a movie, and I fell into a deep sleep. She woke me up to try to take me to bed, and as I opened my eyes, I saw her face there, but there were all these grid lines on it. It actually frightened me, and my heart started beating really fast. Then, making my way to my bed, I felt so nauseous, and my heart was beating so hard I could hear it, and I could feel my whole body just vibrating. It was weird. OP includes an edit that says they want to reassure us that they do not have schizophrenia. They are self-diagnosed as completely healthy. It was just a split moment between their sleep state and their wake state. Very strange. You know, I've been seeing a lot more grid stories pop up recently. I wonder if there's something to that. Double food for me. This happened about a month ago. At the time, I didn't know much about the Matrix or glitches, so I never took any photos or anything like that. I tried to rationalize what happened. I only found out about the idea of a glitch in the Matrix from a girl on TikTok who had a similar experience. So here I am, telling you my story. 1 month ago, I went grocery shopping with my sister and my father. We were on a diet, but on Sundays, we allow ourselves to have one sweet thing. I chose a specific type of biscuit that's a bit pricey. It's about €3 for a small pack and €6 for the regular size. We hadn't bought them since I was 7-year-old, and I'm 24 now, so they hadn't been in our house for years. When we got home, I started putting everything away. I found my pack of biscuits and put them aside and went back to the grocery bags. To my surprise, I found another pack of the same biscuits. I double-checked because sometimes I just space out while doing things, but no, there were 2 packs of biscuits. They had the same expiration date and the same little black spot on the packaging. I'm not sure what caused that, to be honest. They were identical, almost like they were cloned. At first, I thought maybe my sister had bought the same thing, so I asked her. But she said no, she bought muffins instead. I ran to check the receipt, and the biscuits weren't listed. We added up all the items on the receipt, and it matched the amount charged to my dad's bank account. He paid with his card. So we hadn't bought anything extra. It wasn't like part of a promotion or anything where you buy one, get one free. Trust me, people here aren't that generous. Plus, if it were a promotion, the receipt would have shown 2 packs. We also checked the grocery store app. They give us points for shopping, and after a certain number of points, you get something for free. I remembered that on that day, the free item was the eggs. The cashier even told us, you can get the eggs for free if you want. So my dad ran to grab them and came back to the register. When we checked, sure enough, the app confirmed that it was the eggs, not the biscuits. Here's where it gets weirder. When I opened the first pack of biscuits, there was one with a weird shape, and I laughed at it before eating it. A few days later, when we finished that pack, I shared them with my little brother, my dad, and my sister, who also shared her muffins with me, by the way. Thanks, sis. I opened the second pack, and guess what? I found the exact same weird-shaped biscuit. I was like, are you kidding me? But I just chalked it up to coincidence. I told a friend about this, but she didn't believe me. I started to feel like I was going crazy, but my dad and sister were there too, and they were just as confused as I was. And no, it wasn't a mistake at checkout. If the cashier saw 2 packs of biscuits, she would have charged for both, and we would have noticed too. Honestly though, I'm not complaining. Double treat for me. This person includes an edit that says, "A kind person reminded me of a detail that I forgot to mention. I had been on a diet for months and hadn't eaten anything sweet, so when I ate those biscuits on Sunday, it felt like heaven. The next day, I got my period, and I tend to eat a lot during that time, especially sweets. I felt a bit of self-hatred for overindulging, but I got back on my diet right afterward." Is this considered a glitch? The cat boxes that I've had for my cats for a couple of years now suddenly have logos on top of them that were never there before. I looked back at old photos to see if I could find one of the cat boxes in the background of a photo, and sure enough, the logo was on the cat box in the background of the photos. I was thinking about it more this evening and decided to find the product listing. I went through my Chewy order history, and for those that don't know, Chewy is a subscription pet food delivery service, and I found the exact ones that I ordered. And the product photos do not have a logo on top, but they do now on both of my cat boxes. I don't know, team. Do you think this is more of a glitch in the Matrix, or maybe a Mandela effect? Something weird is happening with my fish. I posted about a glitch I experienced last week, and now weird stuff just keeps happening. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. Now, weird things are happening with my fish. For some context, I have a small-ish pond, around 700 gallons, and 9 aquariums ranging from 6 gallons up to 150 gallons. Every day, I feed and check on my fish, spending sometimes hours watching them. I know almost every fish. I've never named them, but I know exactly who is who. Most have pretty distinguishable features that don't look like any other fish, or I have a head count of indistinguishable fish. My pond contains 7 orange goldfish, 3 koi, 4 shubunkin goldfish, and dozens of rosy red minnows. Those are the only fish that I don't know the exact count of. The goldfish and koi are by far my favorite fish, and who I spend the most time watching and interacting with. I have a hammock chair right next to the pond where I spend a lot of time watching them and enjoying my pond and garden. When I come to feed them, they all come to me waiting for their pellets. I can put my hand in the water and they'll swim into my hands and brush against me, almost like a cat does to your leg. I'm very bonded with these fish. So much so that I count and check that everyone's there. Because being outdoors, well, it comes with many risks for pond fish. Raccoons, heron, and owls, just to name a few. So I'm very aware and always check every day to make sure they're okay. I love these fish. Now, on to the weird occurrence. A couple of weeks ago, I went about my daily routine of feeding and watching my fish. When I went to the pond, I was distraught to see 5 of my orange goldfish. 2 of them were missing. I found no sign of them anywhere. Now, my water is crystal clear, with a waterfall and bog filter to keep it sparkling. The pond is lined with a black liner. The bright colors of these fish pop against the dark background, and these fish are between 7 to 9 inches long, so they aren't small. There's nowhere to hide except one spot that's covered by a big rock to make a tunnel. But even so, from the far left side of my pond, you can still see under it. After some time trying to locate the fish in and out of the pond, I resolved into the sorrow of losing 2 fish. I was very sad. I figured a predator must have figured out how to get them, and they were unlucky enough to be caught. A week and a half goes by of the same routine. I see my 5 remaining orange fish along with all the others, and I still feel a little sad about the loss. I was still in routine with the remaining fish, but counting 5 orange goldfish each time now. Fast forward to a few days ago. I go about my routine, and there are 6 orange goldfish in the pond. I have no reasonable explanation as to how one returned. Then, the following day, I go out to the pond and now all 7 orange goldfish are back. As of this morning, they're all still at 7 orange goldfish. I have no idea where they went or how they returned. I'm baffled. Now, of course, throughout this whole ordeal, I had my husband come and see as well, and he's just as baffled as I am. And that's not even the end of the weird fish saga. I have a 6-gallon tank with 3 baby angelfish who are the size of about a nickel, who I'm waiting on growing a bit bigger so that they can go into the tank with my bigger angelfish. While caring for that tank today, I discovered 4 angelfish babies. I have no idea where the 4th one came from. Generally, fish can go missing because other fish, let's just say, clean up the evidence of a deceased fish that were never there showing up, and fish that disappear only to come back doesn't happen. I don't know what's going on with my fish, but it is really, really weird. This person includes an edit that says, "So, yesterday, I was enjoying my fish like any other day, looking around at my pond and my flowers and such, when seemingly out of nowhere, a dark object just dropped out of the sky into my pond. I was, understandably frozen for a minute, wondering what the heck just happened. I moved to the pond to investigate, and I only found a frog. It's not uncommon to see a frog in there every now and then. I'm never concerned with frogs since my fish are all bigger and can't be eaten by them. But how did it just drop out of the sky like that? There are no trees close by. I do have a 6-foot privacy fence nearby, but can a bullfrog climb a fence? And can they even jump that high or that far? Even so, the frog would have had to jump several feet up to be in the position that it dropped from. Then again, against the blue sky, the dark silhouette just literally appeared and dropped straight down. I'm guessing it was the frog, but I don't know if it was the frog at all. What is happening? My glitch in the Matrix from 30 years ago. Glitches in the Matrix are not new things. I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me. It was either 1994 or 1995. I was at Brunel University, and we were part of the student radio station, and we traveled to Hull University because they were holding the student radio station conference that year. We had a great night, and I can tell you who was with me too. We had Dave, Adrian, Ian, Emma, John, and myself. Adrian was driving us in a minibus. It's a 200-mile journey from Brunel University to Hull University. So Adrian was driving us back from Hull University. We were on the motorway. I look out the back of the window at about 15 minutes into the journey, maybe 20 minutes, and I swear that our van is going backwards. So I tap Ian and I'm like, hey, we're going backwards. We're going to hit that lorry. And Emma spots it now too, and we're all screaming at Adrian like, speed up. We're going backwards. We're going to hit that lorry. Adrian seems to be unable to hear us though, and we look away as we shelter as if we're going to get hit. But as soon as we expect the impact to happen, there's nothing. No impact. And so I yelled to Adrian, "That was close. What are you doing, dude?" Adrian doesn't reply. So I'm talking to Ian and Emma, and Adrian isn't replying to anybody now. Don't forget, there's John and Dave as well, and it's like they also can't hear us either. So we're in the back of this minibus, and it's almost as if we're dead? I think that me, Ian, and Emma are dead, while Adrian, John, and Dave have survived this crash, and so to us, it looks like they're just carrying on driving back. It's really freaky. This goes on for like 5 minutes. It seems that only me, Emma, and Ian can talk to each other, even though we're tapping the other 3 in the front of the bus on the shoulder. They still don't reply or respond to us. It's like we don't exist. Emma suddenly gets really cold, like freakishly cold. We pile blankets on top of her, and she's shivering now. She's speaking, but not making much sense. And then John just climbs over the back seat, comes and sits with us and starts chatting normally. And we're like, "John, are you dead now too?" And he's like, What? What are you talking about?" We can't talk. We think we experienced the car going backwards into a van, and we can't seem to communicate with John or Adrian or anybody in the front seats. Either they're winding us up, and this is some elaborate hoax, but that makes no sense because we all saw the van was going backwards. "You've just joined us on the other side now. You're dead," I said. And John replies, "I'm not dead. I'm fine." And he turns to speak to Adrian and David in the front of the minibus, but they still don't respond to him now that he's in the back seat. So we're freaking out. We're like, okay, so this is dead. We're dead. This is what dead is like. About 10 miles later, Adrian, who's driving the bus, turns around and says, "You're all really quiet back there. Everything all right?" This is by far the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. And to this day, I still think we went backwards and we got hit by that truck. But I have no way of proving it, and I have no way of ever going back to that situation to re-examine it either. What do you think happened? In a simulation, disappeared. This happened at Brickell City Center in Miami last Saturday while shopping with my sister and her boyfriend. We were on the second floor, headed to the escalators. We arrived a few steps before a mother and her 2 kids. They were maybe 10 or 14. So we hopped on first and they followed behind. I noticed this family because they're all striking. They're all kind of glowing a little bit. As we go down the escalator, I hear one of the kids behind me say, "Well, it's not like they don't know it's a simulation." And I thought, ooh, I like what they're talking about. As we approach the bottom of the escalator, I turn around to take a look at them again, and they're gone. While I didn't see them step onto the escalator, I did sense them and hear them, especially when the one spoke right behind me. I immediately thought something was afoul, so I told my shopping companions, and we scanned the floor above for any sign of them, with no luck. The non-existent stairway down. In the late 70s, early 80s, a new 3-screen movie theater opened in my small town. Like many things in that time period, it seemed so cool. It wasn't an old downtown theater with wooden seats and thick Victorian architecture like I had been used to at the old theaters that surrounded my area in the little towns. This one was a modern and sleek, new 80s architectural building. It had white plastic seats with red and black cushions, and the back of the seats adjusted to 2 settings which felt like either sit up or lay down. The halls were white with red and funky printed carpets. I wasn't very used to going to the bathroom by myself. I was somewhere in the 9 to 12-year-old range. I don't remember exactly. But my parents were always there, so when, during the movie, I had to go, they told me just to go straight there and then to come back quickly. So I walked out of the dark theater, down the short hall that was angled uphill a little bit to the bright white bathroom. I opened the door and went past the sinks and straight to the urinals. I did my business and then went back to the sinks to wash my hands. I moved to the electric hand dryers, dried my hands, and noticed that as I was drying my hands, that the door out of the bathroom actually had a long, narrow window that showed the hall outside. I didn't remember that when I came in. I finished drying my hands. I opened the door and took a couple of steps out and down the first set of stairs. And that's when I noticed there weren't any lights on down the next run of steps. I stopped dead in my tracks. I knew that I hadn't taken any steps to get into the bathroom in this moment, and I was kind of terrified. I turned around, bolted up the stairs and into the bathroom through the door and across to the mirrors and the sinks again. I retraced my footsteps, not understanding, and as I turned around to look at the doors again, I realized there really was only one door in and out of this bathroom. So how did it take me down to the flight of stairs that existed when I came in? As I looked in the mirror for the door that I had just come back through, I realized this time it didn't have a window in it, like when I noticed when I had originally come into the bathroom. So I went back through it again, and now I was on the slope of carpeted hallway that led me back to the theater that I had started at. Over the course of my teenage years and early 20s, I visited that same movie theater many times, never finding the door with the window panel in it again, and always wondering what had happened in that one moment in time and where that staircase into the dark may have led me. I heard a conversation in Fast Forward tonight. I'm a bartender, for whatever context that may provide. I closed down my bar and went to the only late night one still open to say hey to my friends. It's a small town, and there's very few spots. It was a slower Friday, but 2 a.m. rolled around. I sat at the bar and watched my friends on what seemed to be 4x speed. 3 minutes seemed to pass in about 45 seconds. I heard sped up conversations, and I saw sped up movements, bartenders pouring drinks, and people closing out tabs and walking out. Unusually fast movements and that high-pitched voice when something is sped up on video. I heard that too. I feel like I'm losing it. Everything came back to normal after a few minutes. I'm home now and I feel fine, but what the F? I've never experienced hearing sped up voices or movements in real life before. I have no idea what that was. First floor disappeared. Well, me and my friend were going down the stairs to the first floor from the third floor. We descended down, walked past the second floor, and suddenly, boom, there's no first floor. We literally ended up on the ground floor. We were so confused. As we went upstairs again, we saw it was the second floor again. If we came back from the ground floor, then it should have been the first floor upstairs and not the second. No, we got downstairs again and the first floor suddenly appears. And no, we weren't tripping on anything. I think it was a real-time glitch. We were very careful about it because the first floor was really decorated with flowers because of the floral culture week that we were celebrating. So even if it hadn't disappeared, there's still no chance that we could have missed it. This person includes an edit that says, "To all of the Americans telling me that the ground floor is the first floor, I'd want to clarify that it was my college and I know each and every floor. Also, I've mentioned the floral decoration at the first floor, which is hard to miss." I don't know about you guys, but these stair sets or escalator or elevator glitches are sometimes confusing, but they're still so trippy. I can't imagine ever being caught in one. Car crash. I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this or not, but it happened a couple of years ago, and I can't stop thinking about it. So, my ex-brother-in-law was getting married in and on Mackinac Island, so we all had to drive out. My ex-wife, son, and mother-in-law left a day before me. I had to work for a few hours and take the dogs to the kennel before I started the 6+ hour drive. On the way back from the wedding, something happened which I still can't figure out and replay it in my head continuously. I was driving my 2014 Jeep Wrangler, and I went to reach for something to drink in the passenger seat. The bottle rolled away a little, so I reached further, which ended up causing me to pull the wheel to one side. I realized I was close to the side of the road and went to correct it. But between overcorrecting, driving 80 miles per hour or more in the middle of the UP, and it being a Jeep, I lost control and flipped it. I remember rolling over a couple of times and the Jeep going into the woods on the side of the road. I can remember the sound of the wood exploding from the small pine trees and the smell of earth when I finally stopped moving. For a moment, I registered that I was in terrible pain, but then it went away. I remember laying in the wreckage, realizing I was going to die and never see my son again. For a few seconds, I panicked about this and I tried to move, but I couldn't. After a few more moments, a sense of calm came over me, and I realized that he would be okay, and that everything was going to be okay, and I was okay with dying. It was pure acceptance. Then suddenly, it was like that never happened, and I was back in my Jeep, and I swerved but corrected okay, and I pulled over to the side of the road. I remember feeling like I was having a panic attack, white as a ghost and covered in sweat. I got back in my Jeep and drove for a bit more. Once I got to the nearest little town outside the national park, I stopped and drank a bunch of coffee. After a bit, I finished the drive home. I told my ex-wife about it and she thought I was teasing her. I told my best friend and he thinks that I must have fallen asleep while driving and dreamt it all. But I don't know. I know that it happened. I can still feel the feeling of weightlessness as the Jeep was rolling and flying. The deafening sound of metal and trees colliding, it was also vivid. And the moment of panic, and then the feeling of acceptance shortly after, was also real. Has this ever happened to you? My mom teleported. We were all hanging out, me, my two cousins, and my mom. I was about 16, and my cousin was 15, and I think the other one was, like 6. We had just finished watching The Crazies, and were kind of jumpy. We were going to eat a late-night dinner at Wendy's. It was very dark outside. My mom went upstairs, and we waited at the base of the stairs for her so that we could leave. She takes a while. She still hasn't come down, and we start hearing noises in the garage. We were scared, and I go up the stairs to get my mom, but she's not there. And it looks like she never was. The lights on the second floor are all off, and it's pitch black up there. The noise in the garage continues. My cousin shoved his little brother to the garage door, and when we opened it, my mom was in there getting something out of her car. We never figured out how she got down the stairwell without us noticing. I mean, there's literally no other way to the garage than from the stairs. And we were right there in front of it the whole time, all 3 of us just waiting. Someone in the comments asked, "Well, did you ask your mom about it?" And OP responds with, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, I walked right past you guys." But no, there's no way she could have done that. With none of us noticing, and then eventually all of our anxiety on high alert after hearing noises in the garage? I don't know. Silverware changing in my hand. I'm a server, and we use special forks and knives for dessert versus dinner. One night, I was going to set up one of my tables for desserts, and I go into the silverware drawer, I look down at the pile of spoons, and grab one. When I got to the table to put it down, I noticed I was holding a fork. So, I'm like, crap, maybe it was just mixed in there. So I go back to the same pile, I look at them, and I see they are all spoons. I grabbed another one, and when I got back to my table, again, it was a fork. Now I know I grabbed from the spoons, and there were no forks in the pile. I confirmed that. I checked because I wanted to make sure I didn't look like an idiot at the table again. I was literally just shocked, standing at the table speechless for a solid 10 seconds, which is a long time to stand in front of 5 people not saying a word. It was so bizarre. I saw something appear out of nowhere. Here's my glitch story. I think about it from time to time, and I've never ever been able to come up with a reason for how it might have happened. Not too long ago, when I was 19, I was working on an archery range at a scout camp for the summer. Both the scouts and their parents were on the firing line shooting the compound bows that we had. I was in charge of the range, which included the responsibilities of safety, inventory, maintaining the bows, stuff like that. While the scouts and their parents were firing, and I was walking up and down the line behind them, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black plastic cable guard fall onto the ground and bounce in between a father and a son that were firing their bows. A plastic cable guard is attached securely to a compound bow. It's wrapped around metal and at least 2 strings from the bow running through the cable guard. Without the cable guard, a compound bow would only be able to fire once or twice before breaking. And no compound bow that we had could hold more than 1 cable guard. So when I saw the cable guard fall to the ground, I went over and picked it up. I asked the scout and his father to stop firing so that I could replace the cable guard on the bow since it had fallen off. However, both of their bows still had their cable guards attached. Every single bow on the firing line had a cable guard, and every single bow in the equipment shed also had their own cable guard. At the start of the summer, I had taken inventory of all of the equipment on the range, and this guard was suddenly unaccounted for. And there's no way for a bow that we had to hold a second guard on it. And I saw the guard fall onto the ground. I'm stumped as to how this might have happened. Later in the day, I ran into the father and his scout, and I asked them if they knew anything about the cable guard that had fallen onto the ground between them, but they were both unaware. It was nothing creepy or serious, but I still wonder occasionally about this. The table reappeared from thin air with a weird sound. I questioned my sanity last Tuesday when this happened. I'm still not sure what exactly occurred, to be honest, but finally I just landed on, hell, I'll just post this to Reddit. I woke up and started my morning as I always do. I let the dogs out to do their business. I pulled on some shorts and I start watering all of my flowers. I walked out onto my small stone porch and audibly said to myself, "It's roomy out here without the table." The table in question is a 3-foot high by 2 feet wide by 3 feet long, high-top tiled table that I keep on my porch in the summers to cook on outside to help keep the house cool inside. I had thrown a large barbecue for Labor Day weekend 2 days prior, and my significant other moved the table out onto the driveway next to the grill for more surface space. That evening, when cleaning up, he moved the table into the garage and made a comment that he was going to put it back out when he wasn't so tired. While doing the dishes the Tuesday after the weekend was over, I went to put the grill spatula back by the grill in the garage, but I didn't see the table anywhere. I remember glancing around and thinking, where did he put that damn thing? And cursing him for probably placing his tools on it again in the back corner somewhere. Our garage is enormous, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities that I would miss it. I'm standing in my kitchen with my door wide open, doing the dishes again. This is when I heard the sound. I can only equate it to a metal bang sound, roughly 12 feet from me. I turn around to go and investigate and see if my dogs are okay. Both are lying on the floor, sleeping. I walked out onto the porch, and lo and behold, the table is there. Albeit placed in an odd spot precariously on the edge of the stone steps. I picked it up and I moved it against the wall so that I could walk through. I looked around, assuming my partner had stopped by on his way to one of his work locations and dropped the table off. He'll take stuff to work to fix sometimes because he has a big workshop there. But I don't see him anywhere. I don't see him or his work truck, and the gate is still closed and padlocked shut. We'll come back to this padlock thing. It will matter in a bit. I checked, and the side door to the garage is still closed and locked. I'm stumped. I walk back inside and pick up my phone, and I call him to ask where he's at. I don't see his work truck outside, and he says he's at such and such location, which is about 3 miles away. I tell him what I just heard and what I just saw, and he says, I put the table on the porch before I left at 4:30 this morning. I know what you're all thinking. You just didn't see it. You were so preoccupied that you just ignored it. But I'm telling you, no, not possible. Because I pruned some dead leaves from a potted plant and turned to audibly note that the table wasn't there because of how spacious it was. I then walked through the space where it later appeared. And this also rules out the possibility that I was hallucinating. I wouldn't have been able to walk through that space toward the compost bucket if my mind was imagining something not being there. This led me to my next rational thought. Someone was attempting to burglarize me and they just put it back. The problems that lie in this notion are abundant, though. I mean, I couldn't miss a person awkwardly holding and attempting to steal this heavy, high-top table as I walked around for 20 minutes watering my flowers. They simply would not have had the time to scale my tall and locked front gate or fence with said table. I also live near a school on a narrow street, and people were driving past both ways. This person couldn't have gone unnoticed. The teachers would have called or shouted at me as they were directing morning traffic. Not to mention navigating through my labyrinth of a courtyard silently with said awkward table and being unnoticed? Not happening. Finally, the sound. It was weird. I literally have nothing to rationalize what the sound could have been, and I'm at a complete and total loss. The Tale of Two Tales. One day, my kids and I were at the park across the street from our house, playing until the sun went down. We noticed the little Shih Tzu all alone, and when we left, he was still there by himself. It was on a busy street, and we didn't want to risk him getting hit by a car. We waited for a while to see if anyone would come for him, but no one did. So, we took him home and posted about him in some local groups since the vet was closed. We named him Charlie Hash Brown. The next day, we took him back to the park, hoping to find his family. We put up a lost dog poster with his picture. Soon after, we found out that some people were missing their dog, also named Charlie. Crazy, right? I called the number on their lost dog poster and said, "Hey, I saw your sign, and I think we found your dog last night. We kept him safe until we could find you." But she replied, "That's not possible. I found Charlie earlier today." I was confused and I asked, "Are you sure? This dog looks exactly like him, and he's right here." She explained, "I left the poster at the park where I lost him, but he came home earlier." She came over to meet Charlie Hash Brown, and we talked for a while about the crazy coincidence. We took Charlie Hash Brown to the vet to see if he was microchipped. He wasn't, by the way. And we posted about him in more local groups, walked him around the neighborhood, and asked everyone that we saw if they knew him. But no luck. So we decided to keep him, at least until his owners showed up or didn't. Fast forward about a month later. My oldest son went out the front door to take out the trash, and Charlie Hash Brown zoomed past him. My son tried to catch him, but he couldn't. When I got home a few minutes later, and he told me about it, I immediately started searching for him and kept looking for several hours, but I couldn't find him. I accepted that Charlie might have remembered where his home was and just decided to go back. We were all sad to see him go, and we kept searching for him for the next few days. 2 days later, I got a call from the woman who had the lost dog poster, and I swear to God, you'll never believe what she said. And I still get chills to this day just thinking about it. I came home from work, and my Charlie was outside on the porch. I didn't know how he got out, so I fussed at him, and I went to let him in. But when I opened the door, I was greeted by my Charlie. So now this lady has 2 identical dogs named Charlie and Charlie Hash Brown, sniffing each other and playing together. How did this even happen? She lived about 2 miles away, and being from California, he had to pass hundreds of houses to get there. I don't know how it happened, and I'm still baffled. I stayed in touch with the lady. I mean, this had to be fate, right? And it was. One day, she told me that her sister's dog had passed away, so I gifted her Charlie Hash Brown so that she would have a fur baby to love again. Now, Charlie and Charlie Hash Brown can grow up together like they were destined to do. The dog that disappeared. In 1989, a friend bought a small house on a large piece of land in the hills of PA and asked me and another friend to house sit for a week. This house only had 4 rooms, and we only moved in a couch and some boxes at this point. We were sitting around, talking and listening to music late one night when we heard scratching at the door. I opened the door, and a little Jack Russell walked in like he owned the place. The dog didn't look like he was wandering around the hills. He was well-groomed and well-fed, but he didn't have a collar. We had no idea where he could have come from, because there wasn't any other house around for miles. We went back to listening to music and talking while the dog enjoyed a belly rub. Then, the dog jumped up and ran towards the bedroom, barking. He slid to a stop in the doorway and his fur was sticking straight up. He was looking up as if he was looking at someone and growling. We looked in the bedroom, but we didn't see anything. I tried to get the dog to come back and lay down, but he was focused on something that we couldn't see. He started slowly walking backward out of the room as he was snarling and growling. This freaked us out a little bit, so we decided to step out and get some fresh air. I tried to get the dog to come with us, but he was still focused on something and wouldn't stop growling. We stayed in the front yard because there was no light anywhere other than from the windows of the house, and we couldn't see very well. We heard the dog bark one more time, really loud and short. It was different than the way he had barked earlier. It was like he was startled. We went back in the house to see if the dog calmed down, but the dog was gone. We looked around everywhere for the rest of the night and never found the dog again. All the windows were locked and the house only had one door that me and my friend were standing near the whole time. This happened over 30 years ago, and it still bothers me today. I'm still friends with the guy that I was with that night, and we still talk about it sometimes and try to figure out what could have happened. But we never can. I dropped a small object and saw it roll on the floor and then disappear. I was in my bedroom, standing next to my bed, and was taking things out of my pants pockets from yesterday and was putting them into my pockets in today's pants that I was wearing. Keys, headphones, and 2 individual foam earplugs. The floor is a clean, hardwood floor with a small pile of clothes consisting of a few shirts, a sweatshirt, and a backpack. I put one foam earplug in my pocket and I dropped the second one. I watched the earplug hit the floor, roll, hit my foot, and changed direction. It rolled near the clothes pile and just disappeared as it was rolling. I thought it may have just fooled my eyes, and I picked up the shirt that it was rolling past when I saw it disappear, but it wasn't underneath. I picked up every piece of clothing in the pile and shook them all out. I didn't find it anywhere. I searched the whole floor and under the bed, and it isn't anywhere. It's just gone. Glitch while driving cross country. This happened 25 years ago. 2 friends, let's call them D and J, and I were moving across the country from Georgia to Arizona. We packed up everything that we owned into 2 cars, put CB radios in them to keep in contact while driving, and headed across the country on Interstate 40. We stopped occasionally for breaks, to switch drivers, stuff like that, so we didn't get too tired. 2 days in, we were just about to cross the New Mexico-Arizona state line at about midnight. D and I were in the car in the lead, and Jay was driving behind us. Right before the state line, D and I see the headlights suddenly veer off the road. We called him up on the CB, and he said he was rattled, but okay. He didn't know what had happened, but something was wrong with his car. We got off at the next exit, double back, and find Jay. By that time, he had figured out that he had a blowout. His left front tire was completely shredded. It was just ribbons of rubber hanging off the rim, and of course, he didn't have a spare. So we unpacked some stuff from the first car, and the 3 of us drove off to find some truck stop or something where we could get a new tire. About 5 miles past the state line, we find this little tiny truck stop that just happens to have a garage with tire service, though the garage wasn't open at midnight. When the owner got in and heard what we needed, he grabbed a replacement tire, and we drove behind his truck out to where we had left the car. But when we got there, the tire was just flat. All 3 of us had seen it be shredded just a few hours before. The guy from the garage just turned on his compressor and filled it up for us. He said it was weird that it had gone flat all of a sudden like that. He even said the tire should be destroyed the way that Jay described the car suddenly jerking to the side. But he also seemed completely nonplussed. He was a very old guy who seemed to have seen a lot of weird stuff out there in the middle of the desert. The tire remained fine for the rest of the trip. It didn't have any problems until a few months later when it developed a slow leak. Don't know if this belongs here, but a friend told me to ask here. I'm not really a believer in the paranormal, or at least I'm very undecided. But recently, my girlfriend and I went on what was supposed to be a nice vacation and an opportunity to show her where I grew up. We had originally planned to stay in the North Carolina. Why did I say the North Carolina? We had originally planned to stay in North Carolina for a week and then go down to Florida to stay with some of my childhood friends. But 2 days into the trip, we left back for Europe because my girlfriend and I had some weird, unexplainable experiences. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. We rented a quite sizable cabin on a farm/ranch in North Carolina. On the first night, my girlfriend woke me up by yelling at me and hitting me, telling me to stop. To my knowledge, I wasn't doing anything, but she told me that she felt like I was playing with her underwear while she was sleeping. I told her that would be impossible because I was dead asleep and, regrettably, didn't believe her that anything had happened. And I have since apologized countless times. The next night, after spending the day ziplining, we were physically exhausted and went to bed early around 10:30. I don't really have a tendency to dream or remember my dreams, but in the middle of my very deep sleep, I heard my father thunderously shout my name, and he's been dead for 2 years now. I woke up extremely scared, but the room was completely silent, and there wasn't any bad weather outside either. I immediately remembered the night before and ripped the duvet off my girlfriend, and her underwear was pulled loose but still covering everything important, and there were scratches on the insides of both legs that weren't there earlier. I would know, maybe for obvious reasons. I woke her up and she thought I had done it again and caught me in the act. I convinced her otherwise and she said she felt uneasy and that she wanted to take a shower. It was now 3 a.m. and I was confused about what had happened. While she was in the shower, I called my mom to tell her what happened, and her theory was that my dad had woken me up because he could see an evil entity with my girlfriend. Again, I'm not a believer, but my girlfriend really wants me to go visit a priest or a medium or something of the sort. Also, she hasn't slept well since, but nothing's happened since either, and she 100% doesn't blame me. Do you have any theories or advice as to what happened and what we should do? Car disappeared and then changed to a different car. I am beyond confused. I was driving home now, driving the same route that I take every single day. No difference. There was a gray Toyota Yaris driving in front of me, and I immediately recognized the plates as I've seen the car on the highway. The plates are basically the initials of my fiancé's and my names. I was driving towards the estate that we live in, and the car was driving in the exact same way. I remember the car being in front of me the whole way, But when I looked left for not even 5 seconds to admire the sunset, the car that's been driving in front of me this whole time was just gone. The car that was now in front of me was a Polo, and we were still the only 2 cars on the street. I don't know how to explain it, and I don't know what happened, but the car that I recognized disappeared, and all of a sudden is another car. My brain is hurting. Mississippi Faceless Man. So, I write this not for advice or for any real reason, to be honest, though I just wondered if anyone else has seen or heard from someone else of the man. I was maybe 9 or 10 years old in Mississippi, visiting my grandma with my sister. It was the middle of the night, and I had been watching TV. Wanting a drink, I got out of my grand's living room to go to the kitchen. Now, my gran had a deck and a huge window that would show outside. My grandma lived right by the woods, rarely saw anyone at night that weren't hunters looking for deer. And I look out the big window, feeling scared all of a sudden. And outside is a man in a black suit with no face. At least that's what it looked like. Seeing a man with no face is horrifying, especially right next to the woods, and no one else is awake at the time. I went to the kitchen to get my drink, and then looked out the bay window in my grandma's dining room, which was attached to the kitchen. The faceless man was closer to the window now, and he just stood there, unmoving, but seemingly staring right at me. My chest was pounding with fear. After all, the man was closer than he was before. Going back to the living room, knowing I'd be safe due to the locked doors, but also still kind of freaked out, I just watched the TV. I finished drinking my drink and stand up, looking out the window in the living room. Once again, the man was closer, still staring me down, his hands by his sides. Now, feeling even more panicked, I go to throw away the can of soda that I had to drink in the kitchen. I look out the bay window once more, and luckily he hadn't moved any closer. I walked back to the living room and turned the TV off, feeling eyes stare me down. My grandma was asleep. Her husband was asleep with his sleep apnea machine going on in the background of their room. I left the living room to go to my room, that's shared with my sister, and I never looked back. I walked in my room to find my sister passed out, soft snores leaving her lips. I laid down on the ground and I fell asleep. Maybe a year later, we were back in Mississippi, except this time in my grandma's cabin, literally in the middle of the woods. My sister and one of my cousins were already there, setting the house up to sleep for the night. I was in the car with my second cousin. He was driving and we were talking. I told him about the faceless man who had scared me a year or so ago outside our grandma's house, and he joked and said it was him. And yes, while that is possible, after all, they were roughly the same height and body type, I don't think it could have been him. You see, later that night, my cousin, who has said it was him, and my sister were both asleep on the couch. I had fallen asleep but woke up in the middle of the night, once again feeling eyes on me. I follow where I felt the stare, and lo and behold, there he was again, the faceless man, still in his suit, except he seemed taller this time. I turned back to the couch my sister and cousin were on, and my cousin was still there. He couldn't have been my other cousin who had left previously, because my cousin and the faceless man had completely different statures. My cousin, who had left earlier, was a bigger man in the midsection and was shorter than the cousin on the couch with my sister. After that night, I never saw that man again, and I often wondered if it was just my imagination or perhaps a dream. Though I know the first time it wasn't a dream, as I was physically up and moving around and watching TV. I had a friend a few years ago who said she had seen the man too, except in her house in the basement. Has anyone else seen this man? Or was my friend lying and making stuff up so that I didn't feel bad or, I don't know, too scared? If so, I'd love to hear your story, as I'm genuinely curious.